The Federal Reserve concluded their FOMC meeting on Wednesday, May 3rd, releasing this press release, this statement about monetary policy moving forward. We're going to take a look at a couple notable changes here because it's the changes between last FOMC statement and this one that really highlight that the Federal Reserve is most likely done hiking interest rates. Markets are not yet in turmoil, so if this is true, this could signal the calm before the storm. Take a look at some of these changes. The first one here, in the last statement, it said recent indicators point to modest growth in spending and production. And instead of saying that, this time they said economic activity expanded at a modest pace in the first quarter. So last time they were saying, looking forward, we expect modest growth in spending and production. Now they're saying, hey, looking behind us, we see economic activity expanding at a modest pace. So nothing about that continuing or expanding into the future. So that's a big change. They're saying, hey, that growth is behind us. Another thing they said, job gains have picked up, which indicates increased. But this time they said job gains have been robust, which communicates, hey, they've been, somewhat the same. They haven't dropped off of a cliff, but they haven't been picking up. Now, this next change, I think, is the first most significant change between what they said last time and this time. So last time they said recent developments are likely to result in tighter credit conditions for households and businesses. So they are looking ahead at that and saying, hey, a couple of things have been happening, and we expect that that could result in tighter credit conditions. This time, they completely eliminated that first part of the phrase, and they said tighter credit conditions for households and businesses are likely to weigh on activity, hiring, and inflation. So the thing that they're looking forward to is what those tighter credit conditions are going to do. So they're saying that they're likely to weigh on economic activity. But the tighter credit conditions are here, and they fully recognize that. And that's something that they're 100% accurate about. When you look at credit conditions, when you look at interest rates on debt, when you look at banks pulling back on lending, when you look at access to loans by small businesses and households, we absolutely right now have much tighter credit conditions. And so they're recognizing that and saying, hey, this is going to weigh on economic activity like hiring and also inflation. This is a very deflationary, this is going to have a very deflationary impact on the economy. Kind of the same thing here that they're saying, the growth happened in the past. So right now we're looking at things that are going to be weighing on growth. And then they also say the extent of these effects remains uncertain, because last time they said that it is uncertain. So they're just saying that that part hasn't changed. Now, the next change here that they made from last time to this time, I think, is the second most important indicator of the future of monetary policy here. So last time they said the committee anticipates that some additional policy firming may be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return to inflation of 2% over time. In determining the extent of future increases in the target range to return inflation to 2% over time, they'll take into account all the cumulative stuff. So you can see they scratched out a ton of that, and the only thing they said this time was, in determining the extent to which additional policy firming may be appropriate to return to inflation over to 2% over time, the committee will take into account these things. So instead of saying, hey, we think that in the future some tightening will be necessary, they're saying now we're just figuring out the extent to which additional tightening may be appropriate. And they also took out this part that said, in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is enough to return to low inflation. So they took that out. Basically, they're signaling we have achieved monetary policy that is restrictive enough to bring inflation down. Now we're just trying to wait and see how long we keep it here, because everything they're saying here is extremely negative about the economy. The growth that happened was in the first quarter, no longer now. Tighter credit conditions are here. We're just trying to sit now and see, hey, how much negative impact on the economy will these conditions have? Our monetary policy is already restrictive enough to bring inflation down. What effect is that going to have, and how long are we going to sit here? So this is a very deflationary outlook that they are giving here. You always have to read between the lines, because the Federal Reserve never wants to just come right out and say, hey, things are going to start crashing here. They're never trying to spook the markets. They're always trying to be very careful with what they say. So you have to read in between the lines. And when you look at and compare the changes from last statement to this statement, you see that very clearly.